the more we identify with the surface, the surface, the dense experience of life, the more pain we experience. And the more we identify with life, the essence of living, who we are, the more free we are. And we'll get deep into the discussion about this, and then we'll have an experience of it. That's what's so great about Kundalini Yoga. It's not armchair philosophy. You don't just sit and chat about it and then move on. It's not positive thinking. Definitely not that. It's experiencing, like yoga is the journey to the subtle experience through the dense. You know what I mean? Like this is dense. Your bones and your skin and even your nerves. Even your thoughts are dense. And we'll get to that. Even your emotions are part of the physical body, according to the yogis. Even though you can't see them. Right? Well, you can see them expressed in some people, but they don't always look the same. So the great masters experienced what I'm talking about now primarily in two ways. Any guesses what they are? I'll give you the one, meditation. You know what the other one is? Starts with a C. It's not headstand. That doesn't start with a C. Compassion. Right? The heart of all the, like in the yamas of the Yoga Sutras, the main yama is ahimsa. It means compassion. And if you follow compassion, all the other yamas will take care of themselves. If I see myself in you, how could I steal from you? I don't want to be stolen from. When you're raising a 5-year-old, you're experiencing this in the most simple form. Like my daughter came home with some sunglasses from kindergarten, and I was like, these are not your sunglasses. Where'd you get them? And she said, well, they were in the cloakroom, and nobody was using them at the time, so I brought them home. So you have to explain, those probably belong to somebody. How would you feel if somebody took your... It's a lesson in compassion. See that the other person is you. Really simple. And that's how the great masters experience yoga. And it's a yoga class, so it's good to talk about these things. So compassion is you recognize all beings are you, and meditation is you recognize all beings are you. They both come to the same result. And yoga, the practice of yoga, we know it means huge. It comes from the word huge, which means to unite or to link. So that means that yoga is a relationship. That's what yoga is. And it's a relationship between matter and energy, or density and subtlety, right? Like the energy that you experience in your body, you can't see it. If you feel low energy, high energy, you can't see it, but you experience it through density, through matter, right? And you're both of those things. And they are essentially the same thing. They only appear to be different. Right? You experience your energy the same way you experience your elbow, right? It appears to be the same. It is the same, actually. It appears to be different. But it's you experiencing the whole picture, right? Surface matter. And on the surface, matter or nature appears to be changing constantly, always being born, living, and dying through stress and pressure. That's how matter is born, through stress and pressure. If you don't believe that, ask any mother who's given birth to a child. They'll tell you. They didn't, in the cartoon, the stork brings the baby and everybody's really happy and nice. And that's not how it works. It's intense. And it's a great gift. Right? That's how all matter is born, out of stress. Some people think, I wish it wasn't that way, but it's just that way. And it's always, everything in density is happening like that. Like relationships. Relationships come and go. Do you have all the same relationships that you've had throughout the entire time of your life? No. Are they the exact same? Is your relationship with your mother the exact same as when you were 2 years old, 10 years old, 25 years old? It's always moving, shifting, changing. It's part of nature. And your body does this. You know, some people spend their whole life trying to get their 20-year-old body back. It won't happen. I mean, you can take really good care of your body and feel healthy. I'm not saying just let it go, but, nature happens. It's a good bumper sticker. Ideas shift and change and grow, and they're part of nature. Emotions do this. But the big question here then is, does anything actually die? No. In nature, what happens? It just becomes something else. It never actually dies, like your body. It appears to die on the surface. But what happens to your body when you die? You just become something else. You know Neil deGrasse Tyson, the physicist? You know that guy? He's on the show Cosmos. He was a student of Carl Sagan. He's a brilliant scientist. And he said, the best thing to do when you die for the benefit of everyone is to not be cremated and not put your body in a box, but actually just dump your remains into a hole. It's not very extravagant, but it will increase the rate at which it becomes something else rather than block it off. So I say with my family when they ask, what would you like to have when you die? Just dump me in a hole. You could have a party and everything, but don't do anything with the remains. Just leave it. Yeah. We have to somehow get around that, I guess. I mean, that's an interesting thought. I understand why for crime and everything. But, we have issues with death. We just pretend it isn't real. Oh, it's not real. Let's tuck it away, hide it. Let's make it illegal. Yeah. Yeah, right. That's right. But nothing is ever permanently gone. It just changes shape. And if it keeps changing shape and keeps changing shape and keeps changing shape, is anything actually finite? No. It's infinite. It's constantly present. It just appears to change or appears to die. It's always changing shape. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool. I find it refreshing, actually. Even thoughts and ideas appear to disappear, but they're carried through time and space. Like you create a legacy, and your ideas live forever. Right? I mean, I read about the Buddha all the time. He's been the physical man, like the historical figure. He's been dead a long time. He's still here. People are still talking about him. The only way that your ideas and thoughts won't live forever is if you don't be yourself, like your best and brightest self. You just kind of scrape by, getting by mentality. You don't live as the best version of you. If you live as the best version of you, you create a legacy. That's how it works. And then the family after knows about you. Like on the Day of the Dead in Mexico, you put the photos of your family, and then that day they get to come back and hang with everybody. They get to cross the bridge. But what happens if you don't put the photos up? Well, they say that even in the realm where the dead are, if you start to forget them, they disappear. Their legacy ends. And I find it a little bit interesting. I went to the Museum of Anthropology at UBC. It's a really good place to visit. But I find it interesting that in this culture in Canada, when somebody dies, you have like a one-day thing, and then everything else is sort of like you just ignore it, unless you have like an anniversary personally. But in other cultures, you celebrate the dead. There's like a holiday for it, instead of like let's just tuck it under the rug. Interesting, huh? And even your karma affects the generations front and back of you. Like if you are really abusive to your children, they'll be abusive to their children and down the line until somebody goes, enough of this. Or if you teach your children to have a great imagination, they'll pass that to their children and on down the line. So nothing actually just goes away. You even see it with this Me Too campaign. Like people are assaulted and then they pretend like nothing happened. Obviously they're living with the pain of it. It won't go away. Even for the predator, it won't go away. It's still there. So you only appear to die. That means what is there to be afraid of? There's nothing to be afraid of. That's what the yogis say. It's easy to just say that. I'm not afraid. But when you're in the last breath, there's a lot of writing about this. Tibetan Book of the Dead. Yogis talk about this in the Bhagavad Gita. When you die, if you think of Krishna, you'll transcend into the next freer life or something. Who knows if that's true? You have to test it. Don't take my word for it. You have to test it. And the interesting thing from a scientific standpoint is that, do you know this? The same energy in the universe and megaverse and multiverse where we live is always present. Even though we think everything is expanding, the amount of energy doesn't change. It's a closed system. Nobody's proved otherwise. In fact, a lot of scientists tried to prove otherwise. They went against Einstein and the theory of relativity, but nobody could disprove him. And he really stood behind it. Even though everything's changing and expanding, the same amount of energy is always present. Nothing gets added. Isn't it cool? That's God. That's what we think of as God. We put all these belief systems and you have to believe this or else you're not a this. And it's all mind control and nonsense. But the actual infinity of it is just matter constantly changing, generating, organizing, destroying. That's it. It's just constantly doing it. And you're a part of that. It's not separate from you. Isn't it cool? I think it's cool. It's a cosmic dance, constantly dying and rising up and living and then dying and then that's how it works. Even if you can't see it with your individual human eye, you're here right now and you're also across the globe. How can that be? That doesn't make sense. How could it not be if everything is interconnected? I'm not talking about philosophy. I'm talking about atomically, scientifically, you are everywhere. It's not a nice, one love, put on the Bob Marley and smoke a spliff and all feel united. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about science. You're connected to all of this. You're not separate from it. Religion tried to tell you that. If you pay this money, then you won't be separate anymore. You can't pay, you can't buy it, you can't be good to deserve it. It doesn't work like that. You can choose to create less suffering in relationship to it. It's up to you how much suffering you create through your actions. This is a yoga class. We're learning about yoga. And when you deny that you are all of this, guess what happens? Resistance shows up to correct you, to restore the balance. That's what happens. Ask anybody who's been addicted to drugs or alcohol. They'll tell you. Ask anybody who's been, caused harm. It might not happen in this lifetime. It might happen because you're always becoming something else. The yogis say you have 84,000 chances to get it. Those are pretty good numbers. 84 million to achieve a human birth, 84,000. I don't know where they get the numbers, by the way. You have to ask a numerologist. But these are the numbers. I think they just throw out a big number, and so it just gives the intellect something to chew on. There's no science to it. It's just like, oh, I don't know, 84,000 there. That should keep them busy for a while. You know, somebody like Krishnamurti or somebody get tired of answering questions, so you just say a number. You know, and then later confess to the fact that he just threw out whatever was convenient at the time because it was time for lunch or something like that. You know. And you'll notice that the places on our planet that struggle with resistance, the duality, I'm a this and you're a that, the places on the planet that struggle with that, the most crisis is there. Look at the planet. Middle East, people fighting about whose God can beat up whose God, whose land is holier than whose land. There's a lot of crisis in those places. You know, which means we have to resolve our differences. It's you fighting against you. How does that work? It's like in the body. If you have healthy cells and sick cells and they fight against each other, eventually, you know, it'll seem like one is winning, but it will show up somewhere else in the body. You have to see through it. The yogi sees sameness everywhere. You are all of this. It's not separate from you. If you think it's separate from you, like I believe this and you believe that and we can't get along, the Buddha called it Maya. It's an illusion. You think you're separate, but you're not. And you can keep playing the game as long as you like. 84,000 lifetimes until you go, enough! Have you had an argument before with somebody that spanned over a long period of time? Eventually, somebody has to be the grown-up. Or will carry on even to the next generation. You know, I told in a class before, I worked for a Muslim man who was a very kind person, but he started one day talking about, oh, the Jews do this and that and the other thing. I thought, oh my God, how am I going to get through the day with this guy? You know, it was really challenging. So I had to hold space without going along with his ideas, but without being an asshole. It's a delicate thing. Especially when you're holding the saw and he's cutting something. Anyhow, later he cut off his thumb and I drove him to the hospital and never went back to work. But that's another story. I was like, okay, that's enough for me. Thank you very much. So you are everywhere, infinite. We call it God. And it's impossible for this to be outside of you. It's a fact. It's impossible for God to be outside of you. So yoga is the awareness that yes, you're here experiencing time, space, karma, the illusion of duality, all of this within reach. And at the same time, you're everywhere experiencing the beyond, like all of time and space at the same time. How do you experience that in a way that's not overwhelming? For the intellect, it's overwhelming. The intellect is like, whoa, what? How can I be? Oh my God. How can you experience that? Through meditation. It's the only way. Our teacher Guru Singh says, you know, you can even go beyond this planet in meditation. But if you get caught in the need to be right, you can't see past it. In your own life, look at your own life. When you think you're really right about something and you're caught on that and then you found out that that isn't true, you feel sort of silly. But when you were believing it was true, you couldn't see past it. Well, that happens on a collective level too. We are the only planet that has life in the universe. You believe it's true and you get really worked up on it. You can't see past it. How do you know? Wait and see, right? I don't know. But Guru Singh's saying you could see in meditation all these other planets, the ones that got it wrong and the ones that got it right, how to interact with each other, and you could learn something from that. There's a common thread of meditation in all the different traditions. You know, Jesus said the kingdom of God is where? In the church in Italy? Incorrect. Inside you. Right? And when you're connected to that, you're connected to all of this. The fifth dimension. We have all these cool words to describe this, right? The fifth dimension. Pure awareness. Buddha mind. The heart of the Christ. Yoga. I mean, call it whatever you want. Love. Fun phrases, right? So yoga is a realization that you are God. We all are. And if you don't believe it, then take a different stance and say there's no God. That's a very Buddhist idea. There's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as the self. Everything is mind. It's the exact same thing, just dressed in drag in another way. So you just pick something that, it's like giving the intellect a bone. You know, if you have a dog that's a nuisance, is always bothering everybody and nipping at them and they can't sit still. And what do? You give the dog a bone and it will leave everybody alone. That's like the intellect, you know. The intellect is like a running commentary. And if you have a really busy mind, it's so annoying. It's like having somebody walking beside you always going like this. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, step over this. Better close the door. Oh, better remember your keys. Oh, you better do this. Oh, you better. Oh, so-and-so's thinking about you. Oh, well, what about this? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Like it just goes on and on and on. And sometimes even when you're trying to sleep. You know? And sometimes the ideas are really good. But most of the time, it's just nonsense. Sometimes it's an actual family member. That was funny. You know, and mostly when the person is doing that, it's because it's happening inside of them. So you have compassion for them because you think, if that's what's coming out of them, what's going on inside? You know, that's a yogi. That's where the compassion connects to the meditation. You can see, oh, this person is in pain. That's why they behave like this or whatever, you know. Instead of thinking, like our teacher says, try and see where the person's assholeness comes from. That's what compassion is. It came from somewhere. They weren't born like that. You're just like born with a racist baby or something. I mean, it's absurd. I don't know. If they came out racist, nothing we can do. I mean, you know, it doesn't make any sense. It's learned behavior from karma. So you can call it whatever you like. But you don't have to pay to be infinite. You were born infinite. We abandon the abuse of all power and mind control that's come from government and religion to keep you from seeing who you are. I'm a this and you're a that. This is nothing new. Ram Dass, one of the teachers who I love, he said, we're all just walking each other home. That's what it is. Or if you look closely, everything is your teacher. Everything. Even the horrific violence that is going on around you in the world. It's a teacher. It's a reminder. Hey, did you forget who you are? Oh yeah. Thanks for the reminder. I forgot for a minute. I know I was much more intellectual about this before I had a kid. And I watch my daughter and the wonder and how she looks at the world. She's connected to the meditative mind right from birth. You know, like I was sharing this week about a walking meditation. People say, what's a walking meditation? Walk with a 5-year-old when they play the game, Don't Step on a Crack. You know, on the sidewalk. That's a meditation. She's not thinking about what's going to happen at school and what did Sally say about this and, you know, what did Dad was mad at me this morning. She's not experiencing anything like that outside of the moment. What is she experiencing? Complete presence. Don't step on the crack. Probably singing while she's doing it. That's meditation. That's it. You're actually fully present doing something rather than, walking down the street, thinking about your problems, texting your friend, nearly getting hit by a car, whatever you're doing. That's how most of us walk around, including me. I do it all the time. And I know better. Interesting. So a yoga practice is acknowledging all of this. That you are the entire universe at play. Pretty neat, huh? Did you know that you're 7.7 billion people? 7.7 billion religions? All experiencing their moment in their own way. And you're all of that. And you have some say in it. It says in the Ashtavakra Gita, indulgence creates attachment, aversion creates abstinence. Like a child, the sage is free of both, and thus lives on as a child. It's awakening. Not too much, not too little, just be you. Really simple. Not too much, not too little, just be you. And enjoy the experience of being you. Enjoy the dance of being you. Right? Eternally, repetitively creating yourself. And dying and being born and living and dying and being born and living and dying and being born. Isn't it cool? Isn't it great to be alive? I mean, if it's not great, it's kind of the only dance there is. I don't know what else you're going to do. Find some way to enjoy the dance. Because you're just going to keep repeating it. Like, Groundhog Day, the movie with Bill Murray. He keeps repeating the same day. I just want to share one more thing about this concept of the universe being a closed system, and then we'll practice. So if you look at the law of conservation of energy, or it's also known as the first law of thermodynamics. What is it? Energy can't be, if you went to high school, you may remember. Energy can't be created or destroyed. That's the law. Right? In a closed system. So how can the universe be a closed system? That's a question. You know that my poor partner, like when she's tired, I start talking about the universe and the expansion, and I just read this article in Scientific American, and she's just like, leave me alone. She's very patient, so that's good, She experiences it in a different way. But I'm constantly, the wheel is turning. But she wanted to know, how can the universe be a closed system? And that's what Einstein was able to prove with his theory of relativity. It turns out that in Einstein's theory of general relativity, regions of space with positive energy actually push outward. So as space expands, it releases stored up gravitational potential energy, which converts into intrinsic energy that fills the newly created volume. So even the expansion of the universe is controlled by the law of energy conservation. Now I know if you start hearing science words, you tune out. But the cool thing about that is it means that you're expanding constantly, recognizing that you are also holding the center at the same time. So you're growing and having new experiences, but you're still you. And that's happening on a universal level. Isn't it cool? Yeah, it's so cool. I'm like, wow, this is so amazing. Like, I love when it goes beyond just the philosophy of just be you. Well, that's great, but this is a pretty diverse, dynamic place where we live. But it always gets broken back down to just be you. And that you are infinite. It's so cool. So you are matter and energy. You are nature and consciousness. You have been now, and you are now, and you will always be that. The mantra in yoga is Tattvamasi. It means you're it. You're searching for something outside of you. You're it. You're a part of it. You are the infinite. You are God. You are Shiva. You are however you understand it. You are the Buddha. You are the goddess. You are the, in the ocean of love, or whatever you want to call it. That's who you are at the core of your being. You within you. You appear to be finite on the surface, but you are actually infinite. That's the relationship that yoga is. You appear, and you have moments of it. Like I always think about my wife gets really sad when she sees like a show on TV and the teenager is being really like a jerk to the mother. She sees a show and she's like, "No, I don't want my kid to grow up." Like she'll even become very emotional about it. And it's such a touching thing, but at the same time it's sort of a silly thing, because it appears that she's growing up and becoming this and you're experiencing, but at the same time, she isn't. It's a paradox. Yoga is a technology of awareness of who you are. That's why it says in some of the old teachings, like a wise sage mourns for nobody. It's a hard practice. It's not saying be numb and ignore it. Feel it. Experience it. The finite, what appears to be finite. But also see there's something bigger going on than that. I know, I went to my grandmother's 80th birthday just passed. Like, she's not going to be around forever. But at the same time, she is. Because we'll carry on the traditions and the memory, and we'll just keep going, and we'll honor our ancestors and keep her alive. And she just doesn't have to have diabetes anymore. I was driving Dharma Mitra in my car, and Sina was in the back, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so tired of living. I just want to get on to the next." And Sina said, "But Dharma, we want to keep you around for at least another 10 years. And he goes, "I thought you loved me," he said. "Let me go." I got hemorrhoids and my back is bothering me, and I'm done. But there's this clinging, right? I want to stay here. Just be like a child. Yoga is this endless possibility meeting with physical actuality at the border of awareness. You understand? Endless possibility meeting with physical actuality at the border of awareness. Yoga is you experiencing you on so many levels. The finite, the physically present appears to be you. The physical, the intellectual, the dense, your perceived problems and challenges, the illusion of death and separateness, the I'm a this and you're a that, the my God can beat up your God, countries and war and self-doubt and self-improvement, and on and on and on and on. You already have everything that you need. You were born with it. You know it's true. What is the value of a child at birth? Infinite. So you know it's true, but we forget because we buy into this idea that the finite is real, or that it's somehow finite. It's not. It's an illusion. And that's yoga. Seeing who you are in relationship to all of this. The kingdom of God is within you. So now your job is to just wake up. Stop hurting yourself. Stop playing the game. You'd think after a while you'd want to cause less suffering to yourself, wouldn't you? I mean, that's what the Buddha talked about. Your craving is what causes suffering. Oh, someday when I get the Mercedes Benz, then I'll be happy. It doesn't work like that. Just be you. We are slow learners, aren't we? The Vietnamese Zen sage said, when you understand how the mind works, practice becomes easy. You're you. Just be you. And if you can't, then you can go see a teacher who will make you do a bunch of stupid stuff until you do it. Just be you. Okay, I got to wear the turban, and I got to chant this, and I got to hold my arms up for 11 minutes, and I got until eventually you realize, oh yeah, I see who I am in relationship to all of this. If you can move mindfully through matter from conscious awareness, your feet will follow you, and matter will be there to serve you. Why? Because it's you. All right, sit tall, close your eyes.